Hey, welcome back to the show. Today we're going to talk specifically about mergers and acquisitions. You might not know this, but there are some really incredible businesses that are out there that aren't worth anything. And then there's some incredible businesses that are out there that are worth millions. I'm going to walk step by step through mergers and acquisitions so that you know what is it that I need to do to make my business really valuable. What things do I need to avoid to make sure that I don't have one of those great businesses that isn't worth anything? Let's get into the show.
So then the real question is, what goes into creating value for a company?
People, what else?
Assets, okay. Ancillary.
Reputation. How do you put a value on reputation?
What people say about you, right? What else? Production. Thank you, Shannon. One more.
Revenue.
Revenue. Does revenue create value? It starts with it, right? Okay. So I'll give you a real life example. There's a company right now, I just did a valuation, and their adjusted profit was $1.725 million in 2024. I have a second company right now with an M&A. Their adjusted profit was $3.4 million in 2024. Anyone care to guess how much this company was worth? I haven't given you a lot of information.
$275,000. And what about this company? Right now under contract.
M&A offer, $12 million. Okay. So how can a company that's making $1.725 million a year only be worth $275K? This company has a problem, right? How much was what?
How much was the owner doing in sales that counted?
There we go.
Pay themselves, right?
Owner was doing 80% of the production, leaving 100% of her commission in. So she just had a gigantic team. So even though, and she paid herself, right? But none of that was translating into value of the company. And when I spoke, her husband's a litigator, by the way, which made the conversation even more fun. He's a retired litigator. He worked for the Attorney General. So he's used to working on these huge cases, and he's got this guy at Tempe, Arizona, and saying, your wife's asset is only worth $275,000. This after she's written a book. It was not a fun moment. But there's a reason, because there's this huge difference. These are real life examples right now that happened in 2024. This offer is getting ready to close, right? That someone said, I want to pay you $12 million for your brokerage. And this one is saying, I want to pay you $275,000. And there's a difference. And he said, okay, what is it that goes into that? And that's what we're going to get into.
Real estate professionals, you and I both know 87% of the licensees don't make it in this business. Don't worry, I don't have anything to sell you here, but what I do want to do is I want to impact your life. I want to change your life. In order for you to be the top of the top, you're going to need to do some things different. And one of those things is to become part of the Sales Warrior community. Subscribe below, it's free.
So EBITDA is another term I'll throw at you really quickly. That's that adjusted profit number. So it's a term. Earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. Don't worry about it. It's your adjusted profit. But a business is very much like an iceberg. If you just look at the numbers of what it's producing, you're only looking at production, you're missing so much. Because what if I told you, if all the information that I told you, say, Swain, you could have business made $1.725 million last year, and that's the only information you had, and you realize that the owner's producing most of it, that's a bad investment. There are certain building blocks, and these are the key building blocks. It starts with your agents, your training, and your marketing, your programs. Hopefully everybody has all three. I've seen businesses that don't, but sometimes for the value, they actually don't get much further than this. There's not a whole lot there. So as you start to put together your systems and you build technology around it, you build your leadership, you have a real culture, you're still not there. It starts to come together. How well you build it determines your value, how the brokerage is going to perform. And this is something we don't talk about. We always talk about our agents, right? We're not talking about the customers. So as broker owners, who are our clients? Who are our customers?
Agents.
The agents. Who are the agents' customers?
Buyers and sellers.
That's right. We don't talk about this a lot, right? So how well a business actually accomplishes this really ultimately determines its overall value. So this is something, Todd, that we've started to do. I look at brokerages very differently, even from a few years ago. And it's a very interesting exercise. And I have a whole Excel spreadsheet, and I just wanted to touch on it though. But the new currency right now is actually closings, close sides. Has anyone in their brokerage ever taken a look at and saying, how much does one closing generate for me? It could be revenue, right? So you could have closings and they could say, okay, every single closing is worth $10,000, right? Top line. You could say every single closing, and you could look at your company dollar. You could base it on that, right? But you have to base it on something. So if you say, okay, every single closing is worth $2,000 to me. So if you go to your bottom line, how many closings, regardless of what you put, do you get to keep? And when you start doing that at an office level or at a brokerage level, and you start saying, okay, last year I got to keep 300 closings, but the year before I got to keep 600 closings. I'm just making up numbers. But regardless of the metric that you use, you can start breaking it down. How many closings does an agent give me? How many closings does my marketing department cost me? How many closings does my accounting department cost me? How many closings does my rent cost me? And when you start looking at a brokerage like that, I can compare. You could have completely different brokerage models, but we can compare you and see how efficient a business is simply by measuring the closing value, right? So it's a different way. When you're recruiting agents, you have an agent that's maybe they're not doing as many, but maybe from just a percentage of your average closing, you're getting more from that agent. They're generating more closings to your bottom line. There's your recruiting target, right? So we have to start looking at things a little bit differently so you can start to compare yourselves.
All right, you're one of the smart ones. You made it to the end. Do me a favor. If you learned something that you're either going to start doing or stop doing as a result of what we taught here, leave a comment below. Make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.